You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, croaking away with hay fever, as usual. I tell myself it's a sexy frog, not just a frog that I sound like, but I'm not sure about that. And I don't know, what's a sexy frog? Anyway, today we are doing a show on reproductive rights. Yes, again. But not just again, with new facts and figures and insights that you may not have thought of before. My guest for today's conversation is Carrie Baker, who is an attorney, a writer, a feminist expert on reproductive rights, and a contributing editor to Ms., and she has guided the coverage in the magazine, which is the go-to place for this, on abortion, its withdrawal as a right, imminent withdrawal, and what to do after, and what to do instead, and what to do nevertheless. So I look forward to this conversation because I think it's going to be very relieving. And revealing at the same time. In the meanwhile, we need to go, ironically enough, inside the headlines, such as they are. The connections between the culture of death that supports the NRA in making this the most armed country pro capita on Earth, and that same culture, with breathtaking hypocrisy, claiming it is for life in its ravaging thirst to end all abortions in the country. These connections are simply unavoidable. For instance, Texas has the most permissive gun laws in the country, and also initiated the first law that ingeniously empowered civilians to turn in women seeking to end unwanted pregnancies by being literal bounty hunters for handsome cash rewards. Oh, let's hear it for the Lone Star State. Not that it's the only one. Only a week or so ago, there was a massacre in the black community. 10 people who were simply shopping for groceries, gunned down by a white supremacist in Buffalo, New York. Oh, and there were security guards, armed and present. So much for that National Rifle Association excuse. The killer was wearing body armor, you see. Another killer this past week in Texas, where 23 people, including 18 fourth graders, children, were slaughtered. He was wearing body armor, too. So, okay, never mind the rationale of making guns illegal, or at least tracing them through background checks, wild-eyed radical concept. How about making bullets illegal, or making body armor illegal, or at least requiring that body armor be licensed? I'm hardly the first to observe that abortion opponents reserve their reverence for life to finding that life in the fetal form. The minute anything is born from that form, needing attention, food, shelter, warmth, education, affection, or indeed anything else, forget about it. And yet women are supposed to mindlessly produce, like an assembly line, endless babies to do the bidding of men in power, for industry or in wartime, or to serve those who do that bidding. Male supremacy, white supremacy. And women are supposed to do so willingly, even cheerfully, or at the very least, dutifully. This cannot be said too often. We cannot repeat this too frequently. We cannot revisit this subject enough. It is the nexus, the very heart of women's oppression. Her rights as a human being, her rights as a citizen, her rights over her own body. Reproductive freedom is a basic human right. A woman's right to terminate an unwanted pregnancy is her human right. Yet we live in a time when, although Roman Catholic countries like Argentina even Mexico, Ireland, and Colombia, which has a concordat even with the Roman Catholic Church, have legalized abortion, while the United States seems to be rapidly going backwards. We've seen it creeping, or should I say marching brazenly along, in anticipation of the Supreme Court decision, which was recently leaked by Justice Samuel Alito. Copying parts of the Texas law that prohibited most abortions in the state, the Idaho legislature approved a bill banning the procedure after 6 weeks. Then the Florida legislature voted to ban most abortions after 15 weeks. And now the Oklahoma legislature has passed a bill proudly boasting that it will be the most restrictive in the nation, prohibiting nearly all abortions and starting at fertilization, and allowing private individuals to sue providers and anyone who aids and abets an abortion. This is the same bounty hunter law that follows Texas, but in this case it goes further by banning the procedure after 6 weeks, when most women don't even realize that they're pregnant. The bill defines the tissue as a, quote, human fetus or embryo in any stage of gestation, from fertilization until birth, close quote. Oh, it makes exceptions for cases of rape and incest, but only if those crimes have already been reported to law enforcement. Now you tell me, what rape or especially incest survivor is ready to do that? No other state currently prohibits abortion, starting at fertilization. The Oklahoma legislation tries to do so by implying legal and illegal tactics that the courts have nevertheless permitted. Civilian enforcement. Civilian enforcement laws have a major chilling effect among providers, and even among pill distributors who can tend to stop their work from sheer fear of being sued. Those who sue successfully will be given awards of at least $10,000 and compensatory damages, including for, quote, emotional distress. So now let's pan back and look at the national situation. The typical patient is already a mother, in her late 20s, attended some college, has a low income, is unmarried, is in her first 6 weeks of pregnancy, she's having her first abortion, and she lives in a blue state. The latest estimate from the distinguished Guttmacher Institute found that 25% of women will have an abortion by the end of their childbearing years. That's 1/4 of American women. 6 in 10 women who have abortions are already mothers, and half of them have 2 or more children, according to 2019 data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. 6 in 10 women who have an abortion are having one for the first time. Another quarter have had one previous procedure. Less than a fifth have had 2 or more. It is simply not the case that abortion is something that large numbers of people turn to as a form of birth control. That's a lie. Much of the political debate about abortion in America focuses on procedures performed late in pregnancy, but the overwhelming majority of them occur in the first trimester. 43% of all abortions occur in the first 6 weeks of pregnancy, and 92% in the first 13 weeks. But here is the crux of the suffering. About half of women who had an abortion in 2014 were below the poverty line, with another quarter very close to poverty. Guttmacher Institute surveys show low-income women have been a hugely growing share of patients in recent decades. The Turnaway Study, a research project that tracked 1,000 women seeking abortions in the U.S. over the course of 5 years, found that women denied an abortion have an almost 4 times greater chance of living below the poverty line, that's the federal poverty line, than those who are not being denied an abortion, as well as an increased risk of serious health problems and also their children are more likely to grow up in an abusive environment. But surely such impoverished, sickly, abused children are more likely to grow up in a brutalized environment that will foster them being cut down by law enforcement for wielding, what else? A gun in a holdup, or a rifle in a school, or even an AK-47 rifle in an anguished cry of multi-murder despair. That's how it works. And that's how it is meant to work. But before we go, let's peek into the corner of Alito's draft decision. He reveals himself plainly there as he repeatedly quoted somebody he described as a great legal authority, Sir Matthew Hale. We are still living today in Hale's world. He's best known for his History of the Pleas of the Crown, a treatise published posthumously in 1736 that became enormously popular in legal circles in England and America. His pronouncements became the bedrock of American law for generations, and their influence persists. Of course, he wasn't writing for women, who were excluded from legal professions and the judiciary, but he had a lot to say about women, though. For example, he said that the law should distrust women who reported having been raped because rape, quote, was an accusation easily to be made and hard to be proved and harder to be defended by the party accused, though never so innocent, close quote. Hale also wrote what became the most frequently cited defense of the doctrine that shielded a husband from prosecution if he raped his wife. Hale said that a woman's agreement to marry meant she had placed her body under her husband's permanent dominion, and that, quote, the husband cannot be guilty of a rape committed by himself upon his lawful wife, for by their mutual matrimonial consent and contract, the wife hath given herself up unto this kind, unto her husband, which she cannot retract, close quote. Well, as late as the 1970s, no state would prosecute a husband for raping his wife. And at least 21 states still treat marital rape more leniently than rape outside of marriage by criminalizing a narrower range of conduct, issuing lesser penalties, or creating special obstacles to prosecution. There are lots of other problems with Alito's reliance on Hale for history. First, Alito has misrepresented the actual historical record. The common law that governed America in its first decades and beyond did not regulate abortion before quickening, that is, fetal movement, which can appear as late as 25 weeks into a pregnancy. Alito also claims that Hale, quote, described abortion of a quick child who died in the womb as a great crime, close quote. But Alito glosses over the key part of that passage. Hale actually wrote that abortion was a crime, quote, if a woman be quick or great with child, period, close quote. Note the if. In sum, Alito's reliance on Hale and his brothers in kind, with no acknowledgment of their feverish loyalties to legalized male supremacy, explains why and how the men who cited Hale as they constructed the early American legal order refused to give women the right to vote or to enjoy full citizenship, much as they lauded such rights for men. But let's cut right to the chase. Hale believed women could be both property and liars, and his judgeship included presiding over a witchcraft trial where he sentenced 2 women to death. You would think it's time we stopped quoting Matthew Hale, Mr. Justice. Such things cannot be said too often. We'll take a brief pause here to breathe, and then I'll return right away with Carrie Baker. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
My guest for the conversation today is Carrie N. Baker. She is the Sylvia Dlugash-Bauman Chair of American Studies and a professor in the Program for the Study of Women and Gender at Smith College. She's also a contributing editor for Ms. Magazine, writing regularly on women's legal rights and on feminist activism. She serves on the steering committee of the 5-College Certificate in Reproductive Health, Rights, and Justice, of which she was a co-founder and former co-director. Has a Bachelor of Arts degree in philosophy from Yale, a Juris Doctor degree from Emory University School of Law, and a Master of Arts and Doctor of Philosophy degrees from Emory's Institute of Women's Studies. She is the co-chair of the Ms. Committee on Scholars, which encourages and trains scholars to write for the public, and she's a member of the Scholars Strategy Network and of the Women's Media Center SheSource, and she served on the governing board of the National Women's Studies Association for 2 terms. It's my pleasure to welcome her. Carrie, welcome to Women's Media Center Live.
It's wonderful to be here, Robin.
Well, it's lovely to have you here, and I feel like I've gone to the source. Ms. Magazine and the Feminist Majority Foundation, which owns Ms. Magazine, our extended family, have been at the front lines of the fight for reproductive freedom for ever. I was going to say years, but it's ever. And lately, you have been the person as a contributing editor, in addition to all the other things that you do, who has sort of helmed the coverage. People are getting clever, obtaining abortion pills online. That was in February of this year.
Pre-Roe hospital emergency rooms were filled with people bleeding and with infections. Women died because of illegal abortion. And now we have an extremely safe medication that can be mailed through the postal system, that can be ordered online, that people can access if, God forbid, abortion becomes illegal or it's already inaccessible in so many places. Abortion pills, and it's this pill mifepristone, which was invented in 1980 in France,
right.
Which what it does is it blocks progesterone, which is what maintains a pregnancy. So when you take mifepristone, the pregnancy begins to shed. Mm-hmm. And then you take a second pill called misoprostol, which causes contractions and expels the contents of the uterus.
Right.
And these pills are safer than Tylenol, but you'd never know it by how it's treated by the FDA and the U.S. government. Yeah. It has been put behind barriers and, these restrictions that the FDA has put on it has made it very difficult to access. And because of COVID, advocates filed a lawsuit and sued to allow doctors to prescribe mifepristone by telemedicine and mail the pills to their patients. And this opened the door to that being the new norm. Mm-hmm. And so now 24 states have telemedicine abortion, which means that you can just go online and see a doctor either by video conference or sometimes even just by online form or a telephone call. They'll screen you as to whether you're eligible and then pop it in the mail and you'll get it overnight.
So civilized,
It's so civilized. And it means, first of all, if you live in a rural area or, you can't, you have kids, and you have to, childcare and all of that. It makes it much more convenient. It's private. You don't have to cross picket lines and protesters screaming things at you. And, you can do it in the privacy and comfort of your own home. And so I think this is a huge breakthrough. It's also, by the way, much more affordable. On average, in-clinic telemedicine abortion costs, in-clinic medication abortion costs about $550 to $600, whereas you can get it through telemedicine for $150. I mean, really affordable. And so it's revolutionary. And of course, the anti-abortion folks hate that and are doing all they can to try to prevent that. But like I say, it's available in 24 states. And in the rest of the states that still block access to telemedicine abortion, people can just go online and order the pills from abroad.
Well,
There's
isn't
an
it
organization.
isn't it true that more than half of all of the procedures in the United States are done via pharmacology, by pills?
Yes, 54% right now. And it's probably higher because they're not getting people that are doing it on their own, which is a significant number of people who are self-sourcing pills. There's a lot of reliable sources for them. There's an organization based out west called Plan C, and they have a guide to pills. Yeah. And they have a drop-down menu by state, and you can search your state and what your options are. And there's a wonderful, and I'm sure you know her, a wonderful doctor named Dr. Rebecca Gompert.
Oh, of course.
Who is, who has an organization called Aid Access, which provides telemedicine abortion to people in the United States in all 50 states, even states that ban it.
Right.
And she formed Aid Access in 2018, and she has mailed pills to 30,000 Americans since then. And a third of those, so she only charges $105, but if you can't afford that, she'll give it to you for free or discounted. And a third of those 30,000 people have gotten it at a discount rate. I interviewed her for Ms. and did a story on her. She's just an inspiring, wonderful person. And so, there's no way the antis are going to stop this. Pre-Roe, there was no internet. There were no abortion pills. Now we have the internet and we have the abortion pills. Now, it's not risk-free. It's very medically safe, but legally we know that in anti-abortion states, they're going to go after people and try to find people's records, and we know they've got
bounty hunters out, kiddo.
Exactly. And we have this sort of surveillance state now. And one thing that really concerns me is that this country is blanketed with these crisis pregnancy centers, or they're really fake clinics run by anti-abortion organizations that pretend to be like neutral, either abortion clinics or options counseling. But in fact, what they do is try to mislead people and discourage them from having abortions by telling them that, lies like that abortion causes cancer, which it doesn't, or that it causes infertility or depression, which it doesn't. So my concern is that people will go into these centers and give their information, and then they'll be tracked by the anti-abortion movement in the state.
I don't suppose there's. This is a naive question. Why am I asking it? But I don't suppose there's any such things as laws against false advertising.
Well, interesting that you ask, because there are advocates around pushing that. Actually, Connecticut just passed a law against deceptive advertising by these limited pregnancy centers. And I live in Massachusetts, and we're working on local ordinances against this false advertising. So Somerville, Massachusetts just passed an ordinance, and here in Northampton, where I am, we're working on one, and Amherst, Massachusetts is working on one, and East Hampton as well. So we are trying to get more accountability. But the fact of the matter is many states use public funding for these anti-abortion centers, even though they're deceiving people and lying to people and putting people's health at risk, quite frankly.
Yeah, but they can't use public funding for that. That should be illegal.
It should be illegal because they're religious, and they often sort of lace all that they're saying in religious rhetoric, but they do. In about 11 states, they get public funding. There's an organization called Equity Forward, which released a report a while back that I did a piece on that documented how many of these anti-abortion centers are receiving public funding. And remember, there's over 2,500 of them across the country, which is like 3 times as many as abortion clinics. There's many more of them.
Yeah.
So I worry that they're going to be part of the eyes and ears of the anti-abortion state post-Roe and help states enforce criminal abortion laws against people seeking abortion.
Do we have people picketing outside them?
Not enough. There are groups that organize pickets like Repro Action and a few other groups. There's a group called exposefakeclinics.org, which goes on and does like Google reviews and outs these centers. If you put into your phone, if you Google abortion services near me, there's a really good chance that there'll be a crisis pregnancy center at the top of the list. I invite your listeners to do that. And it's appalling because they're very deceptive. I interviewed and published a piece with Ms. of a young college student who was at a college outside of Boston who got pregnant, didn't want to be pregnant. And she and her boyfriend Googled, and she knew about CPC. She was a pre-health student, and she was still deceived. And she showed up in Worcester, Massachusetts, at a CPC, thinking that it was an abortion clinic. And it took a while for her to realize where she was. And she said it was a very traumatizing experience and kind of really undermined her trust in medical providers, even though these people weren't medical providers. But she just was deceived. And so, it's very harmful, particularly to young people or people that don't have resources or alternative health care. And I think that we really need to be picketing them and paying more attention to the ways in which they're harming people.
Yeah, I think we really do. I mean, God knows we have enough on our plates to be doing of activism, but I think that's something that should get added to the eternal list. Go on, Carrie.
Well, the other thing you mentioned about fibroids, one thing that's extremely frustrating about the FDA limits on mifepristone is that it has blocked research on other ways in which the drug can be helpful to women and can treat conditions that women suffer with. For instance, endometriosis and fibroids, obviously, a lot of women have these conditions. Yeah. They're very painful. They often lead to hysterectomies. Well, there's significant research actually based in Europe and abroad that mifepristone is very effective in treating fibroids. And it's a non-surgical way of treating fibroids.
Yeah.
But it's not been researched here. And there's no drug company that will touch it because they don't want the anti-abortion backlash. And, there's other treatments. It also helps to treat cancer. It treats Crohn's disease. They have approved it for a narrow exception for Crohn's disease. But, it's being held hostage by the anti-abortion movement. And it's, as a result, really keeping it from women that could benefit tremendously from the drug. And so that's another way in which, abortion politics hurts people, even people that aren't pregnant or has nothing to do with pregnancy.
Of course. It's so frightening because fear itself of something, of them rising against you, there's a self-censoring that goes on.
Yeah,
that doesn't even
absolutely.
Require their militants to activate it. Because it's we don't want to make waves, we don't want to rock the boat, we don't want and in a sense, of course, that has protected Roe from valid feminist critique for years. Because but you and I both know we shouldn't have come in under privacy. It was more vulnerable, and we should have come in under basic human rights, by God.
Absolutely. And equality.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Exactly. Right front and center in the Constitution, instead of sort of backing in sideways under privacy. But it was the best we could get at the time. But there's been an atmosphere. Excuse me, I've got such hay fever. I'm croaking. But that was the best we could get at the time, and I hope that's not still the case. But I think this requires some real audacity on our part. I mean, the numbers are with us. The vast overwhelming majority of the American population agrees that women have reproductive rights and should have reproductive rights. So so you want to say, what the hell is the problem?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's that we don't live in a democratic society. We've lost our democracy if we ever had it.
Yeah.
And, Trump put these far-right anti-abortion extremists on the Supreme Court that are doing what they want to do. And, I am concerned that the Dobbs decision is just the first step. Yes, it will overturn abortion in it will overturn constitutional abortion rights, and 26 states are certain or likely to ban abortion as soon as that decision comes down. But people in the other 24 states are not safe, because it seems very clear to me that the next step is to ban abortion nationwide. And, right after the Alito opinion came down, anti-abortion groups started talking about introducing legislation banning abortion in Congress. But I think actually another possibility is that the Supreme Court will rule that, quote unquote, unborn children have constitutional rights to equality and strike down abortion protective laws in states like California and New York and Massachusetts. And, if you look at Alito's opinion, it's laced with the phrase unborn child, unborn child. And he talks about how, this unborn child has rights. And, the 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause says no person shall be deprived of equal protection of the laws. Well, if they're talking about an unborn child as a person, I think that they very easily could say that fetuses have full rights, and that a woman can't, end the life of this child.
Is that the same as personhood for the fetus? Is that
yes, basically, give personhood to fetuses, and then use that as a way of striking down abortion protective laws, abortion rights laws, and then right now in those 26 states that ban abortion, people are going to have to travel on average 250 miles to get to an abortion clinic. Well, if the entire country bans abortion, they're going to have to travel 500 miles or fly out of the country. Except there is the abortion pill, which, I think that's another thing, is that there already is a robust movement, a network of organizations to support people who order abortion pills online and take them on their own. There are organizations like Plan C that I mentioned. There's the miscarriage and abortion and miscarriage hotline, the M&A hotline, which is doctors who are on call almost every hour of the day to guide people, give them medical advice. And then there's the organization If, When, How, which gives legal advice around the legality of abortion pills and how to protect yourself.
And there are some organizations that try to raise funds for poor women who don't have the funds to get to another state.
Absolutely.
Or
there's
pay
over
a babysitter.
80,
Or
there's over 80 abortion rights funds. I used to be president of the Abortion Rights Fund of Western Massachusetts, and the funds are, raising money like crazy to help people get to where they have to go to get the care they need. Making abortion illegal does not stop abortion. We know that from countries around the world. It just means it's more difficult to get, maybe more expensive.
And women die. And women die.
Yeah.
Also,
although the abortion pill has changed that. A lot less women died today than died, before the pill existed. And, it was women in Brazil in the 90s who realized that misoprostol could cause an abortion. Just alone, it can cause abortion. They looked on the back of the medication. It's an ulcer medication. And they looked on the back and said, don't use this. It causes miscarriage if you're pregnant. And they started using it. And the public health authorities realized that the death rate from illegal abortion was plummeting, and they're like, what's going on? And then they found out that women were using these pills.
Women will always find a way. That's what the right wing seems to not understand. Or they do, but they think they can force it through. And besides, by the way, in terms of they're not stopping here, they'll also go after contraception. They will.
Absolutely.
We're talking Handmaid's Tale, and then some. We really are.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've interviewed constitutional law scholars like Erwin Chemerinsky and others who have said that the Alito opinion very clearly could be used to, support states who want to ban contraception, particularly hormonal contraception. We know that from the Burwell versus Hobby Lobby case, where, Hobby Lobby stores protested having to cover contraception under the Obamacare's contraceptive mandate, and they said that IUDs and Plan B is an abortifacient, and therefore they didn't want to cover it. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And in 2014, the court said, you're right, you don't have to cover it. And then Trump expanded that to any business that doesn't want to cover contraception doesn't have to, if they have a moral or religious objection. And, the anti-abortion movement believes that hormonal contraception is an abortifacient. And so I think that the next thing to happen is states banning contraception. Yep. And I think the Supreme Court will uphold that. I think it's very clear. They don't want people to have sex.
Yeah.
Or they want people to suffer if they do.
That's correct. That's absolutely. Well, women particularly. Yeah. Men.
Women. Men is fine. It's women.
Men is fine.
Right.
And they can always buy sex, and they can always traffic sex, and they can always rape, and they have options. But women, women should definitely not have sex. And the product of women's bodies, the colonized product, must be preserved for them. At their choice. Interestingly enough, we've just lost a battle. We'll go back again for another round for surrogacy, commercial surrogacy in New York State. And I don't mean altruistic surrogacy like when it's a sister,
commercial.
But commercial. And we lost this battle on feminist arguments. So it just struck me. When they want you to have children, you have children. When they don't want you to have children, you don't have children. When they want you not to have children and pretend that you didn't, you don't have it. It's all about controlling women. It's just very simple. It's
about controlling women. Yeah. I mean, it's ironic about surrogacy. I wrote a piece a while back for Ms. about how I believe abortion bans violate the 13th Amendment, because I think forcing people to carry pregnancies to term is a form of involuntary servitude.
That's right.
We pay people to be surrogates, right?
Yeah, right.
But we can force them to carry. And how is that not forcing a woman to be basically a slave to a fetus?
There you go.
And to the people that want that fetus to come to term. And it's, I think we need to keep in mind, pregnancy is dangerous.
Yeah.
Pregnancy is painful and difficult. I mean, I've had 2 children. I chose to carry those children, but it was hard work. I was nauseated for 14 weeks. I my ankles and wrists swelled up.
Absolutely.
I had
a child, and it's very hard. It's very hard work. Around the 18th hour of labor, I thought to myself, why do people do this? What is wrong with my body? He's wonderful, and I love him, and so forth. But my God, this is not a simple thing.
No, and hundreds of women each year in the U.S. die, and between 50 and 60,000 women who give birth in the United States have severe complications.
Especially women of color, especially Black women, are dying at a maternal mortality rate that is maternal mortality, as they put it, when it's actually female mortality. That is staggering, absolutely staggering in the industrialized world.
Yeah, Black women in the U.S. die at 3 times the rate of white women in childbirth and pregnancy. And, when I hear like Amy Coney Barrett saying, oh, it's no big deal, just give birth and, drop it off at the
nearest
fire
hospital.
station. It's so demeaning to women, and it's so undervalues the burden that pregnancy and childbirth poses to women's life, and the burden of giving up a child once you've birthed it.
Yeah,
and, to me, it's what you said. It's about power and control. Guys want to keep women under control. They don't want them as competition in the workplace. They want them at home taking care of their needs. And, at the end of the day, I mean, I remember Catherine McKinnon back in the day talking about how pregnancy and childbirth is the linchpin of women's subordination and patriarchy.
That's correct. That's right.
And, the stigmatization of abortion, and, when people run around saying, oh, it's murder to have an abortion, they're calling like a third of women in this country murderers when they do that. It is so insulting.
Yeah.
It is so demeaning. And, abusive, quite frankly. I mean, I really think banning abortion is a form of violence against women.
Oh, it is. It's absolutely correct. You're right on target, my dear.
It invades their bodily autonomy. It controls them.
It's a violation of your basic civil, in the real sense of that term, rights. It is, your human rights, most assuredly.
Absolutely.
It is just, it's an invasion, and we've got to take it on. Oh my God!
And the thing that's so frustrating is that many countries around the world are legalizing abortion as we're illegalizing
I know, and some of them,
it.
interestingly enough, are like Colombia, which has a concordat with the Roman
Yes.
Catholic Church.
Yes.
They've just legalized. Yeah, they're much more civilized than we are on this front. I mean, this is the legacy.
Argentina,
Oh yeah,
Mexico,
yeah.
Ireland. I mean, all these countries are legalizing abortion. They know what a bad idea illegal abortion is, and yet we're blithely going back into the past and banning abortion. And I just, they're not going to stop us. But the question is, how do we protect ourselves? And I think this underground network to get people abortion pills, and there's also an underground network to get people vacuum aspiration abortions. It's much more underground than the abortion pill movement.
We've talked about that on this show of the old Carmen cannula and the menstrual extraction kits and so forth. And in my blog, I gave a whole list of those places and where they're available.
I just went and bought one online the other day.
Good on you. Right. What the hell? Why?
Right.
But listen, Carrie, you have done your part, even though I know you'll do much more. Her piece is in the current issue of Ms., still on stand, the spring issue, is No Picket Lines at the Virtual Abortion Clinic, with a Roe v. Wade reversal looming and states passing abortion restrictions at a breakneck pace. Women are increasingly going online to access pills easily and safely, and all these other terrific alternatives that she has raised. I'm enormously grateful to you for your expertise and your alacrity in conveying it, and the work that you're doing for Ms., which has always been and is now a pioneer on this issue. They're going to be redoing the We Have Had Abortions that Ms. did 50, believe it or not, years ago.
Absolutely.
God. And we'll keep on keeping on somehow, some way, because we persevere. But it's a drag. It makes me very angry. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for all that you do for the women's movement and for feminism. You've been such a beacon for me over the years.
Oh, bless you, Carrie. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you so much, Robin. It was wonderful to be here.
We have to take our final break here, but I'll return directly with some fighting words. The Women's Media Center, founded in 2005 by Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and myself, is a progressive, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make women visible and powerful in media. You can learn more about the WMC at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Making the connections. Those are fighting words. A few weeks ago on this podcast, I hazarded the notion that the next thing you knew, right-wingers would be patting themselves on the back for making abortion illegal for an additional reason to the ones they usually give. The new one being that it would affect those right-wingers, other ones, who were terrified of replacement theory. You know, replacement theory is this paranoid conspiracy trope gnashing its little pointed teeth that refugees are coming to this country from all over, but particularly across the southern border, to replace us. African Americans are also apparently plotting to replace whites with jobs and by raping our women. Black and brown people are trying to wipe us off the face of the earth, and the whole thing is paid for by those bad, bad Jews. It's a jolly little theory, and a few weeks ago I linked it with anti-abortion activism as sort of a thought experiment, although the linking of these two ultra-right issues was something I found terrifying. Well, imagine my shock when, at the Conservative Political Action Conference, CPAC, in Budapest, Hungary, CPAC head Matt Schlapp, Matt Schlapp is his name, said that stopping abortion could also help those worried about replacement. Now, first of all, let's pause for a second and look at where CPAC was holding its conference. In an authoritarian country that has repeatedly tried to quash women's rights, has virtually outlawed abortion, and is probably the most right-wing member of NATO. I'm not sure I know what it's even doing in NATO or why they let it in. Prime Minister Erdogan is not a nice guy. So that's where CPAC met, fittingly enough. Well, Schlapp continued, quote, "If you say there is a population problem in a country, but you're killing millions of your own people through legalized abortion every year, if that were to be reduced, say, some of that problem is solved," close quote. By us, Schlapp clearly does not mean you and me, or most Americans for that matter. He means white Christians. And Christianity, let's face it, does seem to be the problem. Jews don't oppose abortion. They believe that life begins with birth. So do Muslims. So do Buddhists, or they would if they cared. No, I'm afraid we're back to Christians, specifically white Christians. Some of the same folks who run those so-called crisis birth centers and who cherish those beloved combat-level rifles that are used to kill children and other living things. I won't spend a lot of time denouncing the Southern Baptists because this past week they've had a lot of problems of their own due to 20 years of cover-up for vile crimes ranging from child sexual abuse to sexual harassment to violent rape. No, for this we need to go back to Mother Church, the Roman Catholics who began it all, or would like to claim that they did. Besides, they're the ones with the majority members of our Supreme Court. I've said some of the following on this podcast before, but believe me, it bears repeating. There are people who just don't know it, and they're very surprised. The Church's opposition to abortion was not always so absolute. A fact few people know. It began its poisonous work when Augustine made celibacy an ideal and argued that the only justification for sex was to conceive a child. The 1968 encyclical Humanae Vitae is pure Augustinian, and his theology has dominated the Church for 2 millennia. But it was only in 1869 that abortion at any stage was made subject to automatic excommunication. This had to do with the Church's position on sexuality, not respect for fetal life. The Church pretends that its position on abortion has been based on a so-called right to life and has remained unchanged for 2,000 years. In fact, it has varied continually over the course of history, with no unanimous opinion on the subject at any one time. In 400 CE, Augustine expressed the then mainstream view that early abortion required penance only for the sexual aspect of the sin, as we've seen, not, however, as homicide. 800 years later, Thomas Aquinas substantially agreed. Between 1198 and 1216, Pope Innocent III ruled abortion as being not irregular if the fetus was not vivified or animated. Animation was considered 80 days for a female and 40 days for a male, although it was not explained how anyone could tell the difference in the womb. Pope Sixtus V forbade all abortions in 1588, but in 1591, Pope Gregory XIV rescinded the order, reestablishing permission to abort up to 40 days for both a male or female fetus. Antoninus, he made sainthood, Archbishop of Florence, a 15th century Dominican who wrote a major treatise on abortion, taught that early abortion to save a woman's life was moral. Thomas Sanchez, a 17th century Jesuit, noted that all of his Catholic theologian contemporaries justified abortion to save the life of the woman. It was only in 1869 that Pius IX ruled all abortion murder and defined it as an excommunicable sin. Scholars argue that this was done under great pressure from Napoleon III, who was concerned that the birth rate had been dropping and that France might face a serious depletion of soldiers for fighting wars and for colonization. There it is again, abortion and guns. Furthermore, and also contrary to popular belief, the prohibition of abortion is not governed by claims of papal infallibility, which leaves far more room for discussion than is ever assumed. Catholics around the world, meanwhile, largely support the use of a number of different processes, including birth control. A 2014 poll of 12,000 Catholics in 12 countries found that 78% supported contraception. In Spain, France, Colombia, Brazil, and the Pope's native Argentina, more than 90% supported its use. In a 2008 survey, 71% of Catholics in the Philippines supported the country's reproductive health bill. The Catholic Church has considered lifting its ban on contraception in the past. Of course, that's a slippery slope then, gets the bishops very nervous because abortion could be around the corner. In 1964, Paul VI convened a commission on the issue of contraception. A majority of members, including 60 of 64 theologians and 9 of 15 cardinals, recommended repealing the ban against contraception. Instead, Pope Paul issued an encyclical confirming that it would stay in place. Nothing like ignoring your own people. A mechanism already exists for the Church to change its prohibition on birth control in a theologically sound, well-established, and even face-saving manner. It's called sensus fidelium, or the sense of the faithful. It's very democratic. It holds that a widespread, approaching universal agreement among the clergy and the faithful on an issue indicates truth. Well, Francis sometimes seems almost sympathetic, saying that Joe Biden, for instance, is a good Catholic despite Biden's public backing of abortion rights, and saying that the Church ought to pay less attention, perhaps, than obsessive concern with homosexuality and abortion, and concentrate instead for a while on the soul. But I dream. Meanwhile, donate to local abortion funds in the 13 states with trigger laws. Now. ASAP. Pronto. Arkansas, Idaho, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, and Wyoming. Press for making helmets and body armor licensed or even illegal for civilians. All these things count. Do your homework and make the connections. Those are my fighting words. Add yours on Twitter, and remember to tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag Fighting Words. And that's our show for this week. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and now Instagram at The Robin Morgan, And you can check out my blog at robinmorgan.net and find my latest book of poems, Dark Matter, and my brand new novel, Parallax, wherever books are sold. Opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the Women's Media Center. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. Executive producer as well as founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer of this program, Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us again next time on Women's Media Center Live.